Beneath the endless stretch of blue sky, where clouds drifted like strokes of a painter's brush, the grand halls of a martial sect rose proudly against the mountains. Their crimson roofs and layered towers stood like sentinels of history, watching over the land. Inside one of these solemn halls sat an elderly monk, known far and wide as Living Buddha, Master Mu-san. His calm demeanor and quiet authority filled the room as he addressed the young visitor seated before him. "You said you want to know about Yahello?" the old monk asked, his voice steady and measured. The visitor bowed, a scroll and brush resting in his hands. "Yes, that's right. I'm compiling materials to document his history." Master Mu-san let out a soft chuckle, lifting a fan to his lips as though the memory amused him. "Ho-ho. Yahello, the radiant martial sovereign, Yahello," he said, savoring the name as if it carried both reverence and nostalgia. His expression softened, the weight of old memories pressing against his heart. He was a very benevolent and upright man. The Buddha himself must have sent him down to us. Hearing this, the visitor's eyes brightened with excitement. "Oh, it's just as I thought. Then what was he like in his everyday life?" His daily behavior, his usual appearance. Master Mu-san's expression shifted. His hands trembled slightly as though words failed him. Silence hung in the air until, quite suddenly, his calm facade cracked. His eyes narrowed, and with an uncharacteristic outburst, he spat. "Fuck it, I can't do this." The visitor froze, utterly bewildered. Excuse me?" Before his confusion could settle, the scene shifted to the grand halls of the Hubei Peng clan. A man was hurled across the room, his body crashing to the ground with a resounding thud. "Argh," he cried, pain etched across his face as he landed hard against the floorboards. The tension in the air shifted violently as a furious roar erupted within the halls of the Hubei Peng clan. "Yahello this, Yahello that," bellowed Peng Dojuk, the supreme elder of the clan. His face twisted in rage, veins bulging as he slammed his fists down. "Why the hell did a wretched, trashy human like you come here?" From above the steps, his towering figure loomed, glaring down at the intruder who had stumbled to the ground. His words were venomous, his presence suffocating. The historian scrambled to rise, but Dojak's fury only grew. "Bring a whole bag of salt and scatter it around here," he thundered, as though the very presence of the young man was a contamination to be purged. The historian froze in shock, his voice cracking. "What?" But beyond the shouts and hostility, the story of Yahello loomed larger than ever. Yahello, the radiant martial sovereign. A legendary figure who had ended the era of chaos. A man of honor, a gentleman whose very name commanded reverence. Some hailed him as the greatest of all time. Others declared him the most chivalrous warrior to have ever lived. And yet, if he was so revered, why did whispers always fall silent at his name? Why did people avoid speaking of him, as though his legacy carried not only light, but also shadows? The young historian, burdened with curiosity and duty, pressed forward. As a seeker of truth, it was his task to uncover even the hidden sides of history, no matter how much others shunned them. Through forest paths he ran, determination burning in his eyes. Today, he told himself, he might finally discover the truth. Today, he might finally learn why the world chose silence when it came to the radiant martial sovereign. At last, his journey brought him to a secluded wooden house nestled deep in the wilderness, half concealed by towering pines. A place forgotten by time, yet holding answers he had long sought. And with his arrival, the story was about to truly begin. Ho ho ho. "So you were chased away from Shaolin and even Hubei's Peng clan," roared the man before him. His voice cracked with amusement, his body shaking from laughter. This was no ordinary man. Ragged robes, a patched cloak, and an untamed demeanor marked him for what he was, the beggar sect's divine mad dog. The old beggar slapped his knee, still howling with glee, while the young historian sat stiff, trying to keep his composure. "Yes," the youth admitted carefully. "And their responses were all the same, no matter where I went." His voice lowered. "The moment I mentioned Yahello's name." The mad dog smirked knowingly, eyes narrowing. "Of course they'd react like that." The historian blinked. Pardon? The beggar's grin widened, his teeth glinting. And so, the story shifted. 100 years earlier, the lands of Guangdong basked under the crimson glow of sunset, where the mighty Wei clan stood proud, its towering gates casting long shadows, and within that clan, there lived a man. A man who, despite all the legends woven in his name, was remembered by those closest to him as the absolute worst kind of person. At that time, he was only a boy. Yahello, 12 years old, lay sprawled on his bedding, groaning as he rolled about lazily. His eyes, however, glimmered with ambition. I want to become the strongest. He muttered, almost to himself, there was once such a boy. A boy who dreamed of becoming the greatest under the heavens, born into a martial clan. He was raised in the traditions of warriors, taught of honor and chivalry. From the day he could walk, he was expected to embody the martial ideals of his bloodline, yet within him stirred a desire, not for virtue or duty, but for something greater, rawer, and far more dangerous. Because of his upbringing, the boy already understood something most others his age could not, that if his dream was to become the greatest under the heavens, then there was only one path he could take. His gaze lifted toward the wall scroll hanging above him, its bold calligraphy etched with ambition, greatest under the heavens. The words burned into his heart, a constant reminder of the goal he had chosen for himself. Yahello knew, clearer than anyone else, that the quickest path to the top was not paved with patience or virtue. It was paved with something far sharper. Yahello understood the path to greatness better than anyone else. The road to the peak of the heavens was not luck, nor talent alone, it was paved with relentless effort. No matter how gifted one may be, he often reminded himself, nothing comes without effort. For someone with his will, effort was the only true way forward, but there was a small issue. It was already too late to begin today. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Yahello stared out the window, golden light painting his room. His eyes widened as realization struck, then he threw himself onto the bed with dramatic flair. What a shame, he muttered with a mischievous grin. Today was supposed to be the day I laid the foundation to become the best. He rolled onto his back without a hint of regret. Well, I'll sleep soundly tonight and train tomorrow. And with that, he collapsed into slumber, while the fading sun watched over him, mocking, perhaps, or maybe simply waiting. The room was quiet, save for the sound of gentle snoring. Curled up on his bedding, the young man slept carelessly, a bit of drool clinging to his lips. That peace shattered when a deep voice cut through the silence. Get up. The boy stirred but did not move. I said, get up. The command thundered through the room as a broad figure loomed over him. Blinking awake, the youth sat up lazily, rubbing his eyes with a crooked smile. Oh, you're here. Standing before him was Wei Zhonghan, the stern patriarch of the Guangdong Wei clan, a man of honor and discipline. His piercing gaze bore down on the boy. Do you know what time it is? I saw the sun, the youth answered with a mischievous grin. Yet you're still lying on your bed. Well, because the sun is still going down, he replied with mock seriousness. Zhonghan's brows furrowed. His patience thinned. Do you know how long you've been holed up in this room? 2 days. Maybe 3. No, I think it's 2, the boy guessed, scratching his cheek sheepishly. It's been 4 days, you useless brat. Zhonghan roared. His booming voice shook the room as he jabbed 4 fingers in the air. You've been rolling around wrapped in a blanket for 4 damn days. Doesn't your back hurt from lying around that long? Even a bear would flip over from the sweat after 3 days. The boy only laughed, unbothered by the storm of scolding raining down on him. That's why I get up every now and again, he said with a carefree grin. You don't have to worry about me. The old master loomed over the boy, his face darkened with frustration. The young man, scratching his head with a sheepish grin, admitted that he had tried to train. When pressed further, he explained slyly that each time he opened his eyes, the sun was already setting. With exaggerated confidence, the boy reasoned that once the sun set, it was only natural to sleep so that he could wake early the next morning to train. His smug excuse pushed the master past his breaking point. Roaring in fury, the elder seized a massive wooden mallet and brought it down with terrifying force. The boy was sent flying, crashing to the floor, dazed and upside down. Declaring that he would fix the youth's rotten attitude once and for all, the master's voice thundered across the household. That evening, in the Grand Guangdong's Y residence, the boy's cries echoed as the sun dipped below the horizon. Later, in the clan's office, the weary clan head sat with his face in his hand, groaning in exasperation. His trusted administrator, Zhou Bang, approached and asked if the matter concerned the second young master once again. The clan head confirmed it with a heavy sigh, lamenting that there was no one else who could cause him such worry. Zhou Bang reassured him, suggesting that the boy would eventually mature. But the old man, weighed down by guilt, whispered that it was all his fault. Wai Zhonghan left on a martial duel pilgrimage when his son, Wai Yonho, was only 2 years old. At home, he left behind his wife, Han Sangha, the matriarch of Guangdong's Wai clan, along with their children, Sanho and Yonho, and another child yet to be born, Wai Surian. Believing his journey would last no more than 2 years, Zhonghan set out with confidence. But fate had other plans. Drawn into countless battles and entangled in unforeseen events, his pilgrimage stretched on for 8 long years before he could finally return. Though he earned the revered title of righteous chivalrous swordsman, the cost of his absence was far heavier than any honor. Upon his return, the once gentle wife he remembered now burned with the ferocity of a tiger. "Honey, 8 years? Really?" she asked, her sharp smile striking harder than any blade. And his beloved son, whom he thought would grow without trouble, had become the very opposite of what he envisioned, transforming into a lazy sloth who lay about laughing idly. Zhonghan could only sigh, weighed down not by the battles he fought abroad, but by the changes that awaited him at home. While conversation with a trusted clan member, Zhonghan was reminded of someone soon to return, their eldest son, Wai Sanho. After 3 years of rigorous training at the academy, Sanho was finally coming home. Unlike Yonho, Sanho inspired both respect and fear. For all of Yonho's laziness and mischief, there was one person he could not defy, his older brother. The mere thought of Sanho's return sent chills down Yonho's spine, and so, the day came. Sanho stood tall, the pride of the Wai clan, his presence overwhelming as he faced his younger brother. Yonho, caught between fear and guilt, stammered nervously under his elder's gaze. The contrast was clear, Sanho, disciplined and unyielding. Yonho, idle and evasive. A clash between brothers was inevitable. The room fell silent as a sharp gaze cut through the shadows. His eyes, cold yet piercing, locked onto the boy before him. The younger one panicked, stumbling over his words. "And no. It's not what you think. I trained early this morning. I did. I just took a nap because I was tired." His desperate excuses filled the room, but inwardly he cursed. Damn it. When did he get back? The stern figure stepped closer, his voice calm yet heavy. "You trained?" The boy, trembling, forced a smile. "Why yeah." "Then prove it," the man commanded, pointing to the flickering candle. "Use a technique to split that candle into 2. Confused, the boy blinked. "Huh?" The man's expression didn't waver. "Let's see how much you've improved over these 3 years. Swallowing nervously, the boy drew his sword, standing before the candle. The pressure in the room thickened as his mentor folded his arms. "What are you doing?" "Go ahead." The boy hesitated, stammering, I mean, we're indoors, and it could be dangerous." "I'll take care of that," his teacher barked, voice echoing like thunder. "Just show me what you've got." Fine," the boy muttered, gripping his sword tighter. Sweat beaded at his brow. His breath grew heavy. Closing his eyes, he steadied himself. Ugh. Here goes nothing. The swordsman walks with steady steps, his blade cutting arcs of light through the air as if testing its weight. His eyes remain sharp, focused ahead, unshaken by the silence surrounding him. He positions himself at the center of the courtyard, the glow of a lone lamp flickering nearby. With a firm stomp, he grounds himself, power coursing through his frame. In a flash, his body moves, swift as the wind, fierce as a storm. His sword slashes in blinding strokes, every motion leaving behind trails of brilliant energy. Another man watches closely, eyes widening in surprise at the sheer force of the display. The swordsman unleashes a devastating technique, his strike soaring upward with unstoppable momentum. Soaring dragon. The power surges through the courtyard, shaking the very air around him. As the strike fades, his chest rises and falls. A bead of sweat trickles down his cheek, revealing the weight of the skill he just unleashed. The candle flickers quietly in the dim room, its flame steady under the silence. Suddenly, the young man bursts out in panic, shouting that he screwed up. Across from him, his senior or instructor speaks with sharp disappointment, reminding him that 3 years have already passed. He explains that 3 years should be enough to master a sword technique and advance further, yet instead, the young man has regressed, becoming worse than he was before. The night sky hangs over the building, stars faintly glimmering. Inside, a family gathers for a meal around a well-prepared table. One young man, however, sweats nervously, muttering that he's sure he'll get indigestion. Meanwhile, another, more composed student answers questions about his martial academy life. He says it's fine, and though hardships exist, they are necessary, an essential part of overcoming oneself. The elder father sits at the head of the table, his expression soft but heavy with the weight of time. "You've suffered a lot in my absence," he says gently. His son shakes his head firmly, replying, "You're the one who had it harder, father, being away for so long." The atmosphere is calm, filled with the warmth of reunion, until the father places his chopsticks down, a subtle signal that something more pressing is on his mind. One of the younger men raises his head, his eyes sharp with purpose. "There is one," he says, breaking the silence. The others turn toward him, curious. What is it?" asks the woman at the table. The elder's gaze hardens slightly. "It's about Yonho." The name catches everyone off guard. The woman repeats it, surprised. "Yonho?" Yonho himself, startled, blurts out, "What about me?" All eyes now rest on him. His expression is confused, defensive, but before he can say more, the determined young man declares with conviction, "We need to bring Yonho to my martial academy." The room falls into a tense silence, the weight of his words pressing down on everyone present. A boy's horrified scream shatters the silence, his face twisted in pure terror. Elsewhere, a grizzled warrior with long silver hair speaks with gravity, his words carrying weight. Even the greatest masters, Mu San and Peng Dojuk, grind their teeth at the mere mention of Wai Yonho's name. A sword glows with radiant blue light, the form of a dragon roaring forth as power surges around it. That was when, the narration cuts in, the blade reflecting destiny itself, the great history began. The scene shifts to a young man, his eyes calm but his hand firm on the sword's hilt. His story is only just beginning. No one back then could have imagined, this lazy boy, gazing at the sky without care, would become the center of it all. He rides alongside another, their horses carrying them down a dirt path, his unassuming figure hiding the storm of history soon to unfold. Even the strongest masters ground their teeth at the mere mention of Wai Yonho's name. His legend was forged in a blaze of steel and spirit, when the sword first gleamed with power and history began to unfold. Back then, no one could have imagined that a seemingly idle boy, with half-lidded eyes and a lazy demeanor, would one day shake the entire world. That boy was Wai Yonho. Once mocked as a good-for-nothing, he would become the name that echoed across generations, feared and respected in equal measure. Wai Yonho's life takes a sudden turn when he is half-forced into attending the martial academy. His reluctant steps carry the weight of uncertainty, and his troubled eyes reveal his unease about what lies ahead. Behind him, his family watches with mixed emotions. His younger sister, Wai Surian, breaks into tears, crying out desperately, "Wah! Don't go!" Her trembling hands reach out as if she could somehow hold him back, her sorrow echoing louder than words. In contrast, the elders of the family hide their worries behind encouragement. With booming laughter and hopeful shouts, his grandfather calls out, "Come back a man," while others urge, "Take care of yourself." Though their hearts are conflicted, they let him go. In the end, no one truly stopped him. As Yonho departed on horseback, he called out with forced confidence, "Don't cry. I'll be back." His younger sister's tearful voice trailed after him, "Goodbye." Her small figure waving frantically grew smaller with every step of the horse. Behind her, the elders exchanged reactions, one bursting into booming laughter, while another, clearly less amused, muttered in irritation, "Stop laughing." The road stretched onward, bathed in the warm glow of daylight. The forest whispered with calm winds as the horses trotted steadily forward. For now, the journey was smooth. The journey might have been smooth, but only for Sanho. Meanwhile, Yonho clung desperately to his horse, wobbling with every step. His body swayed like a sack about to fall off at any moment. "Ugh," he groaned in misery. Turning his weary face toward Sanho, he asked hopefully, "Are we almost there?" Sanho's reply was mercilessly calm, "There's 10 more days left." Yonho's eyes widened in shock. T10. Sanho added bluntly, "We would have gotten there in 5 if you knew how to ride a horse." Frustrated, Yonho snapped, "I told you I've never ridden one before." But Sanho's cool tone didn't waver. "I wasn't blaming you. I was just answering your question." The journey dragged on, and Yonho's patience finally snapped. Pulling hard on the reins, he cried out, "Let's rest." His voice cracked with exhaustion as he slumped forward on the horse. "Do you know how steep this hill is? I'm so tired. I feel like my back and butt are gonna burst." Desperation laced his tone as he pointed ahead, eyes lighting up in false hope. "Look over there. Those people are resting too." But before his whining could continue, Sanho's sharp gaze followed his finger. His expression froze, eyes narrowing in sudden realization. Something, or someone, was waiting on that hill. Sanho suddenly pulled on his reins, halting his horse mid-step. Without a word, he dismounted and strode ahead, his sharp eyes fixed on the figures lying under the crooked tree. Yonho blinked in confusion, tugging at his reins to slow down. What? Where are you going?" Sanho's tall frame cast a long shadow as he loomed over the bodies sprawled on the ground. His expression hardened, what lay before him was no peaceful rest. Yonho, still clueless, leaned forward from his saddle and tilted his head. "What are you doing?" Sanho crouched, inspecting the scene closely. His voice came low and grim. "We're too late." Sanho's voice cut through the silence, heavy and certain. "They're all dead." Yonho's eyes bulged, his face draining of color as the words sank in. What? His scream tore out, echoing across the hillside. "Kaiawea." Sanho knelt beside one of the corpses, his sharp eyes tracing the grotesque mark burned into the victim's chest. With a grim voice, he called Yonho closer, "Look at this." Yonho shuffled forward reluctantly, covering his nose and mouth, his stomach churning at the sight. Sanho pulled back the man's torn clothes, revealing a horrifying crimson bloom etched into the flesh, a flower made of veins and ruptured skin. "This," Sanho said, his tone like steel, "is a technique called the flower-indulging palm." Yonho blinked, recoiling at the name. Flower-indulging palm, indulging in flowers? His voice cracked, struggling to make sense of something so bizarre. Sanho rose to his feet, his expression grim under the moonlight. "It used to be called crimson flower palm. But because of a rapist named Juak, who went around committing evil acts using this technique, it came to be called the flower-indulging palm." The weight of those words hung heavy in the air, the gruesome corpses at their feet serving as undeniable proof. Yonho's voice cracked with alarm, his face paling. "Wait. A rapist? Are you saying that he's around here?" Sanho's hand tightened on his blade, his tone grave and unyielding. "He goes for women who are climbing the mountains. These bodies mean that Juak ambushed them while trying to get a woman." Yonho froze, his stomach twisting in dread. Sanho's eyes sharpened, his words cutting through the air like steel. "In other words, there is a woman in danger somewhere around here." Without another moment's hesitation, his body surged with power. He turned to Yonho, his voice quick and commanding. "I'll be back. Stay here." "Huh?" Yonho gasped, but Sanho was already gone. A flash of blinding energy burst forth as Sanho shot forward like a streak of lightning, tearing across the mountainside, his eyes locked on the unseen danger ahead. Yonho's scream rang out, his whole body trembling as he stomped his feet in panic. "Are you telling me to stay here with these corpses?" His wide eyes darted around frantically, but Sanho was already a speck in the distance, vanishing like a shooting star. Hey! Yonho shouted after him, voice cracking, his cry echoing uselessly into the mountains. The wind howled through the grass, whistling in his ears as silence swallowed the hillside once more. Standing frozen, Yonho clenched his fists, his face twitching between terror and despair. Finally, only one sound escaped him: he screams in disbelief, unable to accept being left behind among corpses. His cries echo into the distance as he desperately calls out, but no one answers. Slowly, his anger fades into silence, leaving him standing in the middle of the field, fists clenched, lips trembling. Then his expression twists, part anger, part resignation. A horse whinnies nearby, and he notices movement among the grass. A couple of men, bloodied and groaning, struggle weakly, barely alive. Realization dawns on him, and his forced grin cracks across his face. Sweat trickles down as he mutters with hollow laughter, "I'm screwed." At first, he rages in disbelief, shouting, "Are you telling me to stay here with these corpses?" But his cries fade into silence as he realizes no one is coming back for him. His frustration turns to unease. He tries to look tough, but anxiety creeps in. When night falls, doubt gnaws at him. Liar. What's taking him so long? He should have just brought me along. He starts to worry something might have happened. There's no way he'd be this late otherwise. Then, a terrifying roar echoes through the mountains. The horses tense up, and he goes pale, clutching his fist in fear. "I need to do something. I might become a tiger's dinner if I just loiter around here." Thunder cracks across the sky, lightning illuminating the boy's terrified face. His scream is swallowed by the storm as the rain begins to pour, soaking everything around him. The leaves tremble under the heavy drops, and soon, the entire field is drenched. The horses snort anxiously, shifting their hooves against the muddy ground, while the wounded groan weakly. The boy tilts his head back, water streaming down his face as he lets out a hollow laugh, half despair, half madness. "Ah. I'm really screwed." The storm doesn't answer, only rages louder, as if mocking his helplessness. The storm grows fiercer, lightning splitting the sky as rain pounds down. The young man screams into the storm, dragging the corpses onto the horses with all the strength he can muster. His face twists with exhaustion and desperation. Through clenched teeth, he curses his situation. "Damn it. I can't just leave them behind. They'll become tiger food." The rain-soaked ground makes digging impossible, forcing him to improvise. Step by step, he leads the horses uphill, corpses tied across their backs. His breath comes out in ragged gasps, each step heavier than the last. Surrounded by darkness, thunder, and the weight of death, he pushes forward, muttering between exhausted huffs, "I can't bury them, not like this." The storm rages on, thunder booming across the mountains. The boy, drenched and struggling, clings tightly to the horse as he shouts with desperation, "I need to find shelter." But the horse neighs wildly, refusing to obey, its instincts taking over in the chaos. The boy's face twists with frustration and panic. "Why, aren't you listening to me?" Despite his pleas, the beast thrashes, stomping against the mud, its eyes wild with fear. He grits his teeth, knowing that if he can't control it soon, both he and the corpses he drags will be lost to the storm. Rain pours violently, soaking the rugged landscape. Water rushes through cracks in the rocks as the storm intensifies, thunder booming in the distance. Suddenly, crack. A blinding bolt of lightning tears through the night sky. The rider and his horse are struck, bodies flung upward by the violent impact before crashing downward with terrifying force. A scream of pure agony rips from the man's throat. Kuaagh. His face contorts in pain and horror as the storm swallows his cry, his body spiraling toward the unforgiving ground below, slamming against stone, tumbling helplessly. The horse neighs in terror as it too is dragged by the storm's fury. Finally, he crashes into thick brush, his body battered and bruised. After being thrown off his horse, the young man groaned, clutching his back. "Ugh, my back. That damned horse," he muttered, staggering forward, blinking through the pain and rain. He suddenly noticed something strange. "Huh? What, a cave?" A spark of hope lit up his weary face. Standing tall despite the bruises, he peered into the shadows. The cave was real. Nice. Shelter from the rain, he exclaimed, relief washing over him. As he stepped further inside, familiar sounds reached his ears. Horses. His own companion stood there, trembling but safe. "You guys," he cried, rushing over and grabbing their reins with trembling hands. Though frustration burned within him, he was too exhausted to strike them. "Ugh. I can't even hit them," he sighed bitterly. He tied them down and slumped against the cave wall, his body heavy with fatigue. "What a mess. This is why I prefer to stay home," he grumbled. Still, he had left a mark outside for his brother to follow. Hopefully, it would be enough. Rain poured endlessly outside while the cave offered temporary safety. His thoughts drifted, but soon he shook them away. "Forget it. I don't know anymore," he shouted into the emptiness. With a frustrated yell, he dropped to the ground. "I'm just gonna sleep." Exhaustion finally overcame him, and he surrendered to the darkness of slumber. The young man lay sprawled on the cold stone floor, exhaustion weighing heavily on his body. For a moment, silence filled the cave. His half-lidded eyes flickered open, thoughts of his brother gnawing at him. "I hope nothing happened to my brother," he whispered weakly. But then he shook his head, forcing reassurance into his heart. "No, he's strong. I'm sure he'll be." His words trailed off as drowsiness overtook him. Before long, the steady rhythm of his breathing echoed through the cavern. Even the horses, tied nearby, had begun to rest. The night stretched on, rain hammering outside, but deep within the cave, something stirred. As the boy drifted further into slumber, a faint glow flickered across his body. Blue light seeped from his skin, soft at first, then burning brighter with each passing breath. Still asleep, he smiled unconsciously, murmuring nonsense as the strange energy wrapped around him. Without warning, his body lifted into the air, suspended in a swirling blaze of blue flames. He floated higher and higher, as though the cave itself rejected him. The light carried him deeper into the cavern's depths, twisting through its jagged passages until, finally, it brought him to a place hidden in darkness. His eyes fluttered open slightly. He muttered, groggy and unaware. Before him stretched a chamber unlike any he had seen, greenish mist curling along the rocky walls, filling the air with an eerie, suffocating presence. Something was waiting for him in the depths of this cave. The boy stirred, his eyes blinking open to a strange ceiling he did not recognize. "Huh? Where am I?" he muttered, pushing himself upright. Mist swirled around him, clinging to the cavern walls. It looked like the same cave, yet somehow, different. Did I roll in deeper somehow? He wondered aloud, scratching his head. Then, fated human. His eyes bulged, a shriek tearing from his throat as he stumbled backward and fell flat on the ground. From the haze, a glowing orb appeared, pulsing with light. "Welcome to the fated place, successor of my radiant sword." The boy gawked at it, his voice trembling. Is this sparkling thing what's talking right now?" The orb glimmered in response. "Yes. I have transcended the restraints of a physical being. I speak to you from beyond time and space. Accept my will, and rule over the world." "Ghost," he screamed, clutching himself and trembling. "Do not be afraid. I am already dead. Only my will has been left here," the voice explained calmly. "I have prepared this for the one who would come after me. Accept my will without doubt." The boy's panic wavered, curiosity creeping into his expression. A smirk tugged at his lips. "Wait a second, this situation seems familiar." Inside the cave, the young man's eyes lit up as realization struck him. A cave without human presence, an old man's will. Could this be? His lips curled into a grin. "This," he muttered, before bursting into laughter. A fateful chance. Joy overwhelmed him as he clasped his face, practically glowing with excitement. To him, it felt as if the heavens themselves had chosen to reward him for his suffering. The heavens are rewarding me for my kindness. If I can gain strength here, I won't even need to go to the martial training hall, he proclaimed, his voice echoing against the cave walls. The glowing orb's voice grew firm. There is no time. Inherit my sword and write the morals of the world. I will teach you my radiant sword. Train yourself endlessly. The young man nodded eagerly. Of course. Okay. But then the orb's next words chilled his enthusiasm. If you train hard here for 30 years, you should be able to replicate my technique somewhat. His expression froze. 30 years? Yes, the orb confirmed. Just 30 years, the young man quickly waved his hands. Wait. I don't think this fate was meant for me. Look for the next person instead. He even smiled politely as if excusing himself from a dull chore. The orb pulsed in silence, stunned, before shouting in disbelief. What? But the young man only laughed. Yeah, I'd rather let this go than waste 30 years stuck in here. This was the turning point. The one mocked as a loser, Yahello, gripped his blade with unshakable resolve. From that moment on, the weakling everyone dismissed became a force strong enough to shake the world.